True freedom begins the moment you stop caring what other people think about your choices. This isn't about becoming callous or cruel. It's about recognizing that your desperate need for approval has kept you imprisoned in a life that was never truly yours. Every morning, you wake up and put on an invisible costume designed to please the audience around you, performing in a play you never auditioned for, speaking lines written by everyone but yourself. What if the cold-hearted decision to prioritize your truth over others' comfort is actually the most authentic form of kindness you can offer the world? The most important decision you'll ever make isn't about your career, your relationships, or where you'll live. It's about whether you'll continue to surrender your power to the opinions and expectations of others or reclaim that power for yourself. Have you noticed how we walk through life carrying invisible chains? We drag them everywhere we go, pretending they aren't there. These chains are made of our desperate need for approval, our fear of rejection, and our addiction to being liked by everyone we meet. When was the last time you said no to something you didn't want to do and felt absolutely zero need to explain yourself? When was the last time someone criticized you and you felt nothing at all, no defensiveness, no hurt, no urgent need to justify yourself? For most of us, the answer is never. And there's a word for this condition that afflicts almost every human being on the planet. We're pleasers. We've been conditioned since childhood to prioritize other people's comfort over our own truth. We bend, we accommodate, we compromise, we smile when we want to scream. We say yes when we desperately want to say no. What we don't realize is that this pattern of constant accommodation isn't kindness at all. It's fear disguised as virtue. True freedom, the kind that transforms your life completely, begins the moment you develop what others might call a cold heart. But this coldness isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's the ability to make decisions based on your own internal guidance system rather than the fluctuating opinions of everyone around you. Consider how much of your life is currently dictated by what other people think. The clothes you wear, the car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the career you've chosen, even the words that come out of your mouth in casual conversation. How much of it is authentically you? And how much is an elaborate performance designed to win? A man approached me after a talk once. He was in his 60s, successful by all external measures, the nice house, the prestigious career, the perfect family, and yet there was a hollowness in his eyes that spoke volumes. I've done everything right, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I followed all the rules. I met all the expectations. And now I'm nearing the end of my life and I have no idea who I actually am. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I want. I've spent so long being who everyone else needed me to be that there's nothing left of me. This man had given his life away, one people-pleasing decision at a time, and he's not alone. Most of us are living versions of this same tragedy, just at different stages of this. The path to freedom begins with a decision that feels radical, perhaps even selfish at first. You must decide that your primary responsibility in this life is to your own soul's calling, not to the comfort, approval, or understanding of others. This doesn't mean becoming unkind. In fact, it means becoming truly kind for perhaps the first time. Because when you live from authenticity, you offer the world something genuine rather than a performance designed to please. Think of it this way. Would you rather interact with someone who is honest about who they are, or someone who is constantly shape-shifting to be whatever they think you want them to be? The cold-hearted freedom I'm describing is the ability to stand firmly in your truth without needing everyone to understand or approve. It's the power to say, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what I will and won't accept in my life. And to say it without apology, explanation, or defensive energy. A young woman in one of my workshops shared a profound story about her journey to this kind of freedom. For years, she maintained a relationship with her mother that was deeply toxic. Every interaction left her feeling diminished, criticized, and yet she continued to call, continued to visit, continued to subject herself to this emotional abuse, because that's what good daughters do. One day, after a particularly brutal interaction, she realized something important. Her obligation wasn't to maintain this destructive pattern. Her obligation was to her own well-being and growth. She made a decision that many would consider cold. She limited contact with her mother to what she could genuinely handle with love and without resentment. She stopped explaining herself. She stopped trying to fix the relationship or make her mother understand her perspective. She simply held her boundary with calm certainty. The strangest thing happened. She told our group, for the first time in my life, I felt real love from my mother. Not the obligatory kind, not the desperate please love me back kind, but a clear-eyed compassion that didn't need anything in return. I could see her as a wounded person doing her best with her own limitations, and I could love her without sacrificing myself on the altar of her. This is the paradox of becoming what others might call cold-hearted. When you stop performing love and start living from genuine self-honor, you become capable of authentic connection in a way that wasn't possible before. The cold-hearted freedom I'm advocating isn't about shutting down your heart. It's about removing the corrupting influence of neediness from your heart. It's about loving from wholeness rather than from lack. So what does this look like in practice? How do we begin to disentangle ourselves from the web of people-pleasing and external validation that has defined most of our lives? It starts with small moments of truth. Those tiny crossroads we encounter dozens of times each day where we have the choice to be honest or to be pleasing. When someone asks, "How are you?" and you're actually struggling, do you automatically respond with "Fine, thanks"? Or do you offer a more truthful response? When a friend suggests a restaurant you don't enjoy, do you go along with it to avoid making waves, or do you suggest an alternative? When your boss dumps yet another project on your already full plate, do you smile and say "no problem"? While internally panicking, or do you have an honest conversation about your capacity? These may seem like small things, but they're not. They're the training ground for your freedom. Because if you can't be honest in these tiny moments, how will you ever stand in your truth when the stakes are higher? The practice of cold-hearted freedom requires developing a new relationship with discomfort, both your own and other people's. You must become willing to temporarily disappoint others. You must become comfortable with being misunderstood. You must develop the capacity to sit with the discomfort of someone being upset with you without immediately abandoning yourself to fix it. One of those profound spiritual practices I know is simply this: can you let someone be upset with you and not make it mean anything about your worth as a human being? Most of us have been trained to believe that if someone is unhappy with us, we have done something wrong and must immediately make amends. This belief keeps us imprisoned in a perpetual state of people-pleasing. The truth is that other people's emotions belong to them, not to you. You are not responsible for managing how everyone around you feels. You are responsible for being truthful, kind, and authentic. Beyond that, how others respond to your truth is their business, not yours. I once worked with a man who was terrified of saying no to anyone. He would agree to social engagements he didn't want to attend, take on work projects that weren't his responsibility, and constantly put himself last to avoid the discomfort of potentially disappointing someone. As part of his practice of developing cold-hearted freedom, I gave him a simple assignment. Say no to the next request that doesn't align with your genuine desires or capacity, without explaining, justifying, or apologizing. A few days later, he called me sounding both shocked and elated. "I did it," he said. "My brother asked me to help him move this weekend, and instead of automatically saying yes and then resenting it, I simply said, I won't be able to help you move, but I hope it goes smoothly." "And what happened?" I asked. He just said, "Okay," and moved on to talking about something else. I spent 3 hours afterwards feeling guilty and crafting explanations in my head, but he didn't even seem bothered. I realized I'd been making up stories about how catastrophic it would be to simply honor my own needs. This is a common experience when we begin to practice cold-hearted freedom. We discover that many of the dire consequences we've imagined, rejection, abandonment, conflict, don't actually materialize. And even when they do, we survive them. We discover that we're strong enough to handle someone's temporary disappointment. As you develop this strength, the ability to be true to yourself even when it creates tension or discomfort, something remarkable happens. The quality of your relationships begins to transform. Superficial connections fall away, making room for deeper, more authentic ones. The people who are drawn to the real, you begin to appear in your life. You see, when you're constantly performing, saying what you think people want to hear, doing what you think will make them approve of you, you attract relationships based on that performance, not on who you truly are. But when you have the courage to be authentic, you create the possibility of being truly known and truly loved. Not for your pleasing behaviors, not for how well you meet others' expectations, but for your essential self. This journey toward cold-hearted freedom isn't easy. Our need for approval runs deep. It's woven into the very fabric of our nervous systems. From our earliest moments, we learned that survival depended on maintaining connection with our caregivers. Displeasing the people we relied on felt life-threatening. And in many ways, this early programming continues to run in the background of our adult lives. We feel the same primal fear when we risk disappointing someone, even when the stakes are objectively low. Our bodies don't distinguish between the threat of losing a parent's love and the threat of a colleague being temporarily annoyed with us. Both trigger the same stress response. This is why the path to freedom requires compassion for yourself. You're undoing neural pathways that were established before you could even speak. You're rewiring your most basic understanding of what it means to be safe in the world. So be gentle with yourself as you practice standing in your truth. Expect resistance, both from within yourself and from others who have grown accustomed to your people-pleasing patterns. When you stop playing the role you've always played in the lives of others, it disrupts the entire system. Not everyone will celebrate your emerging authenticity. A woman in one of my seminars shared a powerful story about this. For decades, she had been the family peacekeeper. Whenever conflict arose, she would immediately step in to smooth things over, often at great cost to herself. She would absorb blame that wasn't hers, apologize for things she hadn't done, and constantly modify her own behavior to keep everyone else comfortable. When she began to practice cold-hearted freedom, she stopped rushing in to resolve tensions that weren't her responsibility. The first family gathering where she held this boundary was intensely uncomfortable. Arguments that would have previously been diffused by her intervention were left to play out. Emotions that would have been soothed by her caretaking were left unattended. Their family's response was predictable. They were upset with her. Some accused her of being selfish. Others told her she had changed and not for the better. One sister even said, "I don't know who you are anymore." And she replied with gentle clarity, "You don't know who I am because I've never shown you. I've been so busy being who you needed me to be that I never gave any of us the chance to know my authentic self. I'm discovering that person now, and I hope you'll be patient with the process." That statement, delivered without defensiveness, without a need for immediate understanding, this cold-hearted freedom in action. What's fascinating is what happened next in this family system. After the initial discomfort and resistance, new patterns began to emerge. Other family members slowly started taking responsibility for their own emotions and conflicts. Relationships that had been mediated through this woman began to develop their own direct connections. And most surprisingly to her, people began to relate to her with more genuine respect. They didn't always like the new boundaries, she told us, but there was a newfound respect that wasn't there before. It was as if by valuing myself enough to be honest, I gave them permission to see me as someone worthy of honesty. This is often what happens when we stop performing and start being real. There may be an initial period of disruption and pushback, but if we can hold steady in our truth without becoming defensive or retreating back into people-pleasing, a new equilibrium eventually establishes itself, one based on authenticity rather than performance. Of course, not every relationship will survive this transformation. Some connections in your life exist solely because of your willingness to abandon yourself to please others. When you stop doing that, these relationships may naturally fall away. This can be painful, but it also creates space for new connections based on mutual respect and authentic exchange. When you value yourself enough to be honest about who you are and what you need, you become a magnet for others who value themselves in the same way. The cold-hearted freedom I'm describing changes everything. Not just your relationships, but your relationship to time, to work, to creativity, to your own body and health. Think about how much mental and emotional energy you currently spend worrying about what others think of you. Consider how many decisions you make based on anticipated criticism or desired praise. Imagine what would be possible if you redirected all that energy toward your authentic purpose and deepest values. One of the most common regrets people express at the end of their lives is that they lived according to others' expectations rather than following their own deepest truth. They realize too late that they sacrificed their one precious life on the altar of approval. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can make a different choice right now. You can decide that from this moment forward, you will place your own inner guidance above the opinions of others. You can commit to the practice of cold-hearted freedom. This doesn't mean you'll never care what anyone thinks. It doesn't mean you'll never consider the impact of your choices on others. It simply means that external approval will no longer be the primary factor in your decision-making process. So instead, you'll ask yourself questions. What feels aligned with my deepest values? What serves my highest good and the highest good of all concerned? What would I choose if I wasn't afraid of disappointing or upsetting others? What's true for me, regardless of whether anyone else understands or agrees? There's a story about a great spiritual teacher who is known for his unwavering commitment to truth. One day, a student asked him, Master, how do I know if I'm following my highest guidance or just being selfish? The teacher replied, the ego speaks first and loudest. It rushes to defend, explain, and ensure your comfort and approval. True guidance often speaks more quietly and may initially feel uncomfortable because it doesn't prioritize being liked. When you learn to distinguish between these voices, you'll know the difference between selfishness and sovereignty. This distinction between selfishness and sovereignty is crucial for understanding cold-hearted freedom. Selfishness seeks to get something at others' expense. Sovereignty simply honors the truth of what is without needing to control how others respond to that truth. A selfish person might say, I don't care how my actions affect you. Your feelings are irrelevant to me. A sovereign person might say, I honor my truth, and I care about how it affects you. I don't need you to approve of my choices, but I'm willing to hear how they impact you. Do you see the difference? Cold-hearted freedom isn't about becoming callous or indifferent to others. It's about removing the compulsive need for approval from your decision-making process. I've worked with countless individuals who feared that if they stopped people-pleasing, they would become selfish monsters who trampled over everyone in their path. What they discovered instead was that when they stopped abandoning themselves to gain others' approval, they actually became more capable of genuine care and consideration. Why? Because real compassion can only flow from wholeness, not from lack. When you're constantly depleting yourself to please others, resentment inevitably builds. Your giving becomes contaminated with hidden expectations and unmet needs. But when you honor your own boundaries and truth first, you can then choose to give from an authentic place of fullness. This is why cold-hearted freedom paradoxically leads to warmer, more genuine connections. You're no longer relating to others through the distorting lens of need and fear. You're meeting them as one whole being to another, offering the gift of your authentic presence rather than your performance. A businessman I worked with discovered this truth in his relationship with his teenage son. For years, he'd been trying to force connection by doing whatever he thought would please his son, buying him things, never setting firm boundaries, always trying to be the cool, rather than the parent his son actually needed. The result was a shallow relationship built on performance rather than presence. His son had learned to manipulate his father's need for approval, and neither of them felt truly seen or valued by the other. When this man began practicing cold-hearted freedom, he started making decisions based on what he genuinely believed was right, not on what would win his son's momentary approval. He set clear boundaries. He stopped trying to be his son's friend and stepped fully into his role as a parent. Initially, his son was furious. The easy manipulation that had worked for years suddenly hit a wall of quiet, loving firmness. There were arguments, door slamming, and accusations of not caring. But this father held steady in his truth without becoming defensive or retreating back into people-pleasing. He would say things like, I understand you're upset with my decision, and that's okay. I'm making this choice because I believe it's the right thing to do, not because I expect you to like it. Slowly, something shifted in their relationship. His son began to show a new respect for him. More surprisingly, his son began to open up about deeper thoughts and feelings that had never been expressed before. It was as if the father's willingness to be honest created a space where his son felt safe to be honest too. For the first time, this man told me, tears in his eyes, I feel like I'm actually being a father to my son, not just playing a role I think he wants me to play. And the amazing thing is, he seems to prefer the real me, even when the real me is saying no. This is the gift of cold-hearted freedom. When you stop performing and start being real, you create a field of authenticity around you that gives others permission to do the same. Consider how rare this is in our world. Most of our interactions are filtered through layers of performance and people-pleasing. We're constantly adjusting ourselves to match what we think others want from us. We rarely experience the exhilaration of being fully seen and accepted as we are, because we rarely offer that gift to ourselves or others. But what if you decided to be exception? What if you committed to bringing cold-hearted freedom, this fierce commitment to truth, into all your relationships and interactions? You would likely discover that some people are initially uncomfortable with your authenticity. We've all been conditioned to expect performance, and genuine presence can feel threatening to those still trapped in people-pleasing patterns. But you would also discover that beneath the initial discomfort, there's a profound longing in almost every human heart for authentic connection. We're all exhausted by the constant performance. We're all hungry for something real. By practicing cold-hearted freedom, you become a walking permission, slipped for others to drop their own masks and performances. Your courage inspires courage. Your honesty creates a safe space for honesty. I witnessed this ripple effect in a corporate environment where I was brought in to address a culture of toxic positivity and conflict avoidance. In this organization, people smiled to each other's faces while harboring resentments and frustrations they never expressed directly. Important issues went unaddressed because no one wanted to be the bearer of uncomfortable truths. During our work together, one senior leader made a commitment to cold-hearted freedom. In the next team meeting, when asked for her opinion on a proposed initiative, she took a deep breath and shared her honest concerns rather than the diplomatic half-truths that were standard in this culture. There was a moment of shocked silence. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The tension in the room was palpable, and then something remarkable happened. Another team member spoke up. I've had the same concerns, but was afraid to mention them. Then another person shared their perspective, and suddenly, a real conversation was happening. Not the polite, superficial exchange that usually passed for communication in this organization, but a genuine dialogue where different viewpoints could be expressed and considered. The leader who had the courage to speak first later told me, it was terrifying to break the unspoken rule of always keeping things pleasant. But once I did it, it was like a dam broke. All these insights and perspectives that had been hidden came pouring out. We made a better decision in that meeting than we had in months of avoiding the hard conversations. This is the power of one person choosing cold-hearted freedom in a system built on people-pleasing. Your authenticity creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual interactions. The greatest gift you can give yourself is permission to be exactly who you are, not who your parents wanted you to be, not who society says you should be, not who your friends, partners, or colleagues expect you to be, but who you truly are beneath all those layers of conditioning and people-pleasing. This journey to cold-hearted freedom requires daily practice. Each time you honor your truth instead of abandoning yourself for approval, you strengthen your authentic voice. Each time you allow someone to be upset with you without immediately trying to fix their feelings, you build your resilience. Start with small acts of honesty. Notice where you habitually sacrifice your truth to keep the peace. Is it with certain people in specific situations, around particular topics? These patterns reveal where your freedom is most compromised. Then gently but firmly, begin to reclaim your sovereignty in these areas. I speak your truth without apology. Set boundaries without excessive explanation. Allow others to have their reactions without taking responsibility for their emotions. Remember that freedom isn't the absence of discomfort. It's the willingness to face discomfort for the sake of your integrity. When you commit to cold-hearted freedom, you're not eliminating challenges from your life. You're committing to facing them with authenticity rather than avoidance. The ultimate paradox of this path is that what appears cold-hearted to a fear-based perspective is actually the doorway to the warmest, most genuine love you can experience. When you stop performing and start being real, you create the possibility of being truly seen and truly loved for who you actually are. And isn't that what we all deeply crave? Not the hollow approval that comes from successful people-pleasing, but the profound acceptance that comes when someone sees our authentic self and chooses to love what they see. This freedom changes everything. Your relationships become deeper, your work becomes more meaningful, your creative expression becomes more powerful, your entire life becomes a reflection of your authentic truth rather than your adaptations to others' expectations. The world doesn't need more perfect performers. It needs more truth tellers, people brave enough to stand in their authenticity even when it creates temporary discomfort. People committed enough to their own integrity that they inspire others to reclaim theirs as well. You are here to live your unique purpose, to express your distinctive gifts, to follow your singular path. No one else can tell you what that looks like. No one else can walk it for you. No one else's approval or understanding is required for you to begin. The freedom you seek isn't waiting for you in some distant future when everyone finally approves of your choices. It's available right now, in this moment, through your willingness to honor your truth, regardless of how others respond to it. Choose cold-hearted freedom today. Choose it tomorrow. Choose it again and again until it becomes your natural way of being. The initial discomfort will fade, but the freedom will remain freedom so profound that it transforms not just your life, but the lives of everyone you touch with your newfound authenticity. This is your invitation to the most important journey you'll ever take. The journey from pleasing others to honoring yourself, from performing to being real, from fear-based connection to love-based truth. Your brave awaits. The question is, are you brave enough to claim it?